and I absolutely crashed and burned. Calm yourself, know yourself, and be honest with yourself. And to realize, I think certainly when you're in meetings or in a social situation, that you may feel you can prepare yourself by getting yourself into a null state. When I say null, it means that he had gate crashed this wedding party. And he was so drunk, it was untrue. So I walked up to him and I took a bit of a risk. I just put my 2 fingers and just tapped on his shirt. And I said, "Is never, ever forget your own personal passions."
Hello, Steve. Welcome to Knowing Who You Are. This is our second attempt at this interview because once we have failed due to technological reasons, but the thing is that that's part of life and that's the limitations we have to every now and then overcome. And since we are talking about limitations, I feel that's one thing we are going to talk about today. It's about transforming your communication skills. And you have written a book on this one. And I have been reading this one. It's a very well-researched book. It was written back in 2015, but it still seems very relevant because most of the research as well, they're still mentioned in a lot of recent books that are coming out in 2025. So I found this book to be very useful. So far, you have written 6 books, and you have worn, I would say, many hats, and you are an author with many different talents. For this book, you're known as a business author, but then you have written crime fiction, spiritual books. So to start with this book, Steve, why this book, and why did you feel that you'll have to write something on communication or to transform your communication skills?
It all starts with an absolute communication disaster. I was pitching as part of a team for an advertising campaign, but asked at the last minute to join the team and speak, and I froze on absolutely dry mouth, and it was in front of all very, very important people on the agency side and on the client side, and I absolutely crashed and burned. And so I thought to myself, I'm never going to let that happen again. And so I created this book, and it's a collaboration. So it was inspired by that horrible experience. But what has happened is that I've had 10 very experienced and successful business-wise coaches who have taken a chapter each in the book to explain their experience and what they did and how they went from startup to running their business and the success that they achieved. And so I thought that was by far the best way of doing it, because it's a very wide aspect of intelligence and knowledge that has gone into the book.
Yeah. This is why it feels like sometimes at the university, we're being taught by professors and people who are studying business, and they're teaching you how to do business, but most of them probably are not businessmen. So as you said, the people who are in the field and who are practicing it on a daily basis, and when you include them with your research and the wisdom you have, you're sharing it, but for practicality and people who are facing it on a daily basis, when you include them in the book, that makes it even more authoritative, I think. So, Steve, there's one thing. There's definitely had been a gap, I would say, from time immemorial, ever since we had our language and ever since we started speaking, that communication some people are stronger, some people can do it better, some people are not that confident, and sometimes they cannot get their point across. So you definitely had seen that gap, and from the personal failure as well, you felt that there's a need for such a book in the market and for people to help the people to transform their communication skills. But do you feel that gap had been bridged, or do you see a different scenario, different picture nowadays all around you?
Well, what I see around me is people talking about the technicalities and talking about, if you like, structures and great detail. Whereas the most important part of my book is to really to make it real and personal and very relatable
Mhm.
in terms of one of the reasons, of course, that I crashed and burned was that I had a confidence blackout and I was very, very nervous. And clearly, no matter what level you are in terms of communication innate ability, the main thing is to understand that if you're in a business meeting, or by the way, this book is also relevant to your own personal or social interactions as well. But in a business meeting where suddenly you're put on the spot, to know how to mentally, physically, and use that word spiritually prepare for the encounter and to make sure that you are aware of it and you're not suddenly stuck in, like an animal in the headlights.
Yeah. And especially where I was coming from on top, what you just mentioned is definitely relevant because nowadays we see with the advent of this remote working culture and also the meetings, as you're mentioning, like meetings do happen like how we are doing it now. I mean, we are not physically in the same space, but we are
True.
talking to each other for practical reasons. And thankfully, it's there. But the thing is, not because two people or a few people not in the same room, how much do you think that affects social interaction as well? Because I see a lot of people who are in this digital age most of the time just consuming different contents, reading things, but most of the time the communication is not happening. That's a skill as well, and that's not been practiced much. So that affects as well. Do you experience that? Because since you have written this book, you must see it even better than like mere mortals like us.
Well, I think the important point, and you've touched on it, is that this is all about person to person, human to human. And if you're locked away on your phone or your computer or in an office or working remotely, the important thing is to try to bridge that personal gap and to get people to have some sort of affinity with you and what you're trying to do. Because as a fellow communicator, then clearly you've got to make sure that people respect, understand, and feel confident and assured about your abilities, not just technically, but as somebody they can get to know, get to trust, and hopefully, in these days, very importantly, to be able to work together to achieve a common aim. And if you're not able to get over that first, but very, very important initial point, then everything starts to get a bit cold and sterile and functional.
So to improve that one, even though you touched upon a few of the ideas, but let's dive a little deeper into those ideas. And if there's any foundational concept from the book, or even if you think that probably you can add to it or add to whatever you have there inside the book, but you want to add more to it, because given that you have seen more, you have been through different situations and experienced more, is there any other foundational concept that someone should be mindful of or try to practice or put in practice in their own lives to transform their communication skills?
Realize that you are your own greatest asset. And you've got to make sure that you put yourself across in a way that shows confidence, shows ability, shows calmness, and doesn't make you feel when you're projecting and talking to someone that in fact that you're on edge, you're nervous, not sure of what the content, and worried. You know, you've got to think about yourself first of all, So a lot of the initial grounding in the book is about how to overcome nerves,
Mm.
how over to, to make sure that you can project what your talents are in a way that makes sure that people can see that you are someone to take seriously,
Mm.
and to make sure that you're not worried and doubtful and insecure.
There's a point in the book where you mention about knowing yourself as well, what kind of individual you are. Some people wake up later in the day, and some people are fully awake very early in the morning, and which you mention as lark and owl. And
Yes.
there are a lot of other nuggets of information. But since you mentioned stress and nerve, there is this chapter which is called Reducing Stress, and that's page 69, I'm quoting from. So you have talked about combating stress. So there are a lot of things. You have lifelong ways to reduce stress. You talked about tell your brain to look after your body. Let's discuss a little bit about all those different aspects of it. And then you said be alert to signals of stress, make quality time for yourself, meditate. So which one do you like to talk about first?
Well, they all wrap round into one particular topic, which is to calm yourself, know yourself, and be honest with yourself, and to realize that ultimately, when you're communicating with someone, you are giving them the gift of your knowledge, your intelligence, and the message that you want to communicate. And to do that, it means that you have to feel that in your own confidence, and that you're in the best possible place to deliver that gift to people, and that's absolutely essential. So you're not really projecting doubt and insecurity. You are calm. You can speak in a measured tone. You're not gabbling, because clearly one of the symptoms of when you're speaking, and suddenly you're put on, and the microphone's passed to you, or you're asked to speak, is that there's a nervousness, and you start to speak very, very quickly, and your energy is there to try to overcome, those first nerves. But if beforehand you're expecting that call, and you are prepared for it mentally, physically, and so that your breathing is right, and breathing, probably who's ever listening to this will realize that that is a big thing that people are told about, how can control their breathing, and how can calm themselves, and how when they actually speak, they're speaking in a way that is not gabbled, all joined together, in some sort of crazy panic, but can come across for the people that are there, because ultimately you are there to give a gift, and for people to understand and to act upon what you're actually saying. And that's you understanding your audience. And some people, for example, start by perhaps making a little quip or remark, or having something to pop the bubble of difficulty or tension within the room. If you can allay tension, and if you can get people to be more relaxed so they're ready to listen.
I think this is related to looking after yourself, as you mentioned, and also meditation, which you mentioned. That's
Yes.
another, because you said how to watch your breath and how you're controlling it, and even to think how you're feeling inside, because that will be projected outside as well. And let's talk about this part where you said that be alert to signals of stress.
Yes.
Interesting. And how do you become alert to those signals, and what could be those signals?
Well, I think certainly when you're in meetings or in a social situation that you may feel uncomfortable in, you can prepare yourself by getting yourself into, probably the best way to describe it is a null state. When I say null, it means that you're calmed down,
Mm.
and that you can think about what you're going to say and what you're going to do. And there's a particular technique which is very, very easy to do. And I've used it a great number of times when I'm about to either start to speak or enter a meeting. And that is called The big name for it is called emotional freedom technique. Another easy way of describing that is just tapping.
Yeah,
And what you're
it's
doing
on
is
page
you're
71, I think.
yes,
People who are watching it.
and
Yeah.
you're using your fingertips on the medium points in your business on your body, starting with your head to the head, and then forehead,
Mm.
and then top of your lips, then obviously onto your chest. And that very light, delicate tapping action,
Yeah,
yeah, exactly it.
that's the tapping.
That really helps to calm that stress, and you could feel that stress just easing away. What it also does is that once you've done that, your body, if you like, and your energy is reset.
Mm.
And when you can start to speak, you can then immediately power up and start.
Mm.
And so you go that from that point of balance of feeling right and ready to go, because your mind then has taken away all that stress, and it's eased away, and then you're just ready to go.
Mm. All these techniques, when we practice and be mindful of, and it takes practice itself that you have to do over and over again. But as humans, as we are programmed, because we always first think about our own safety. So when there's a stressful situation or something where you feel a little bit unsafe, say meeting with strangers, social situation where you're not sure about the environment or the people, and you're meeting complete strangers, definitely we feel a little uncomfortable. And we can say that those are the situations when you're communicating under pressure. So how can you maintain grace in situations like that?
I think one of the big things that people worry about is their status within a meeting
Mm.
and the people that they're with. And that can either be, if you like, in a social situation where you may meet somebody who's a celebrity,
Mm.
for example, or somebody who's well known, or somebody who, has achieved great things. And you think, oh, goodness me, how I'm just little old me. How can I actually compete? And what shall I say?
Mm.
Am I going to get tongue tied? And in a business situation like the one I described when I started about my disaster, was that I'm sitting in front of all of our um, uh, board of the business and their board and all their top managing directors and people that are there. And I'm going, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, in my head, how am I going to cope with this? How can I do it? And so you can feel yourself being literally underwhelmed because you're thinking you can't compete,
Mm.
and you're feeling very subjectively um, weak.
Don't mind me asking, when did that happen? I mean, this experience you're sharing with us.
Well, that happened actually very shortly before I started writing the book.
Okay.
And as you appreciate, having performed in that way, my employment contract with that company didn't last an awful lot longer. It was so I knew then that I was, I was a junior account manager, and I was about to, be promoted to account manager and perhaps account director. Oh no, no, I'm sorry, that
Learning
didn't
the hard
happen.
way.
That didn't happen. And so, luckily, I had contacts and people who knew me when I wasn't actually, crashing and burning. And so I got another chance of redeeming myself and learning
Mm.
and improving and thinking myself, as the book says, that I'm never going to let this happen again. Whatever happens, I'm going to make sure that I teach myself how to overcome these issues and to be able to at least hold my own.
It's very important to be honest with ourselves, isn't it? Because not every battle in life we can win. There would be some we would lose, but we will come out victorious in the next one because the experience we had gathered and the learnings from our failures, that's very important. And look, that's why the book is here.
Yeah.
Transform your communication skills. If that incident didn't happen, probably we won't see this book. So There's a interesting thing you mentioned. I like that term. It's a emotional landscape. You said that you need to understand your own emotional landscape before speaking. Can you elaborate on that?
The landscape that you're seeing, it's like your own personal radar is spinning and spinning and spinning and spinning, and you're picking up on different aspects, and it may be to do with the nature of the audience,
Mm.
who you're speaking to. It could be their status, or it could be, as we go on to talk about the structure of the three types of characters that
Mm.
are in an audience that you've got to recognize and then pitch, and so that they um, felt that you are talking to them
Yeah.
and that you understand them and what they need. The first type, not surprisingly, are the visionaries. The visionaries are, as you would expect, the people who are very creative, very bright, very much. If you're talking, you'll use your language, which is inspiring. It's confidence, without the selling. It's something which you talk about your project or where you are or what is happening, but in a very positive and upbeat manner. And if you're showing pictures or if you've got a presentation charts and something is up on the screen, then you're choosing images that are bright, colorful, engaging, and positive. So they're the visionaries.
Mm.
The second group, and sometimes, of course, you get the blends of all three, but the second group are the dynamos, and they're the people within an organization that actually make things happen. So
Mm.
you've got the guys who are, and girls, who are coming up with ideas, creative, and they see the big picture of what is happening and where they could be going. I mean, there's positivity right the way through, but the positivity is sometimes shielded or disguised by their natural abilities or their own feelings of who they are and the job they do and what they've got to do. And the third one is are the people who are the doubters. They're the naysayers. They're the people who need all the detail. They love covering themselves in minutiae, and they are the people that need all the details, the facts, the figures, and the supporting evidence. They're the people who want to drill down and make sure that you have done your research and that you know and anticipate the sort of detail and backup and support that they are looking for.
Mm.
And so when you've got all those three working together, that's obviously the most ideal thing that you can have, because they're in their own way. There's a tick, tick, tick
Mm.
about what you're trying to do.
I was thinking, yeah, definitely these types, and as you mentioned, very rightly so. But when you're meeting someone for the first time, how can someone sort of try to find out what type of person, or these people who are sitting there, what percentage of this group of audience are visionaries, then dynamos, and the naysayers or the
Yes.
doubters? So how would you do that? Because even when you're meeting someone, if it's just one person, that one person could come under these three umbrellas, any of those, or probably a mixture of it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So how would you do that?
I think the in a business situation, let's take that first. In a business situation, it's actually what is the goals within that meeting. What is it to do with opening a new shop, or is it, launching a new product,
Mm.
or is it something that? So if it's a new product, it's got to have that creative part of it. What does it add to us? What's the design going to be like? What's it going to look like? What's all the creativity? How's it going to be promoted in terms of the advertising support, the marketing? What is going to happen from that? But if it's something which is more structured, then you will know that in front of you, you've got a team of people whose job it is to make things work and to make sure that legally and manufacturally and all the other aspects that make something fly or die are there.
Mm,
And then you will know that you've got to pitch and concentrate on winning those people and getting their nods and their approval. Because you've always got to understand that there's going to be naysayers. There's always going to people to ask you to put you on the spot
mm,
and to make sure make you feel uncomfortable. And it's how you react to that.
mm,
You know? Now, in a social situation, it'll be obviously a little bit different. But if there's a way that you can do your research
mm,
on the people beforehand, and this is very important, for example, in the book where we're talking about writing your CVs, it's very important for get to a point where you feel that you could actually interview the people
mm.
rather than interviewing you, so that you've done your work, you've done your research on them and what they're trying to do. And for example, if you're going for a job in a big company, it's good to find out what they're doing in terms of their support for the community
Mm.
or what they're doing in terms of charity. And so that, you know, it doesn't really matter if you're totally accurate. What matters is that you've done your work
Mm.
and you've done something that if you were to join their company, then you will make a contribution and you will be valuable to have on their payroll. And so it's not purely about past experience, and it's not purely about numbers and how many university degrees you've got or whatever it may be, or specialists. It's got to be about, is this person going to fit? And are they going to make the contribution to make our business grow? Because I've run my own business over time. And so you're looking for people who are going to come in to make a difference, not just actually make the coffee.
If you know whom you are meeting and the people and also the company, or say, for example, in terms of when someone is applying for a job, going for an interview, you have an option of researching on it. But say, for example, you're meeting a complete stranger. I think that's where listening comes. It's
Yes.
important. You're meeting someone rather than you go off straight off the bat and just saying things without knowing what that person is like. And the person could be a visionary, could be a doubter, could be vulnerable, could be quite like always speaking in their head and thinking that they would be misunderstood. Okay, what if what I should say? And they might be affected by spotlight effects, like where they're thinking that everyone is thinking about them. Even when they're talking to you, they're thinking what you are talking about them. So I feel that listening is an important part. And that's what brings me to the idea of this intentional listening and active listening,
Yes.
which sometimes we miss out, and probably we all are at times a little bit, I would say, guilty of that. How would you explain that?
I think one of the best ways of doing it is to be aware of your own passions, your own interests, and the things that you like to do outside of that social group or outside of that business. And if it's something, for example, if you play a musical instrument, or if you're a writer
Mm,
generally, or you could talk about the books you've got and have you read this, or television programs, something that's social. Best to avoid politics, because then that could be something that could get you in very deep water very, very quickly. It could well be that if you know these people are into what kind of sport they're into. I mean, for example, I met a guy the other day at an event that I was doing at, and I was talking about the British Lions tour, the rugby. And he says, it's not my thing. Cricket's my thing. So immediately he was contributing with what he loves
mm,
and what he's into. And so then I could pick all of that up and think about all my experience in terms of that sport
yeah.
or that sensation of the sport or great cricketers over time or whatever it may be. So then suddenly you've got that in. You've got that little way of doing it.
Yeah.
Well, one thing I did with this book, I had the great opportunity of running workshops in Surrey University. And of course, clearly, my audience are all people going undergrads or postgrads or whatever it may be. And they're there for a purpose. They're there to get their results
Mm.
and in law or whatever it may be that they're studying, is almost like 90% of their focus, to be able to move on from university and move into paid employment or a company they wish to. So one thing I'd say to them all, after we've gone in talking about the communication skills, is never ever forget your own personal passions,
Mm.
because in the way that our lives are now, you're probably going to be with at least two, three, four, any number of employers, perhaps in different ways throughout your working career. But there will come a point where the passion that you've got should be nurtured and developed and respected, because that is the way that you can relieve pressure, relieve stress in your normal life, but also add something of that very strong and very powerful thread that goes through your entire existence, which is yourself, your love,
Mm.
and your interest in whatever it is that, it could be art, it could be painting, it could be musicianship, it could be working with a band, it could be any number of things.
Mm.
But but if you're focused on just one thing about getting your legal qualifications, then you could be seen as rather a dull person. The more that you can show that and future proof your own mind, and so you're thinking about that, I've got this particular aspect that I'm involved in, whatever it may be.
Mm.
It could be that you're crazy on history, and so you'd love to go down to the Hampton Court Palace, for example, and travel around, or it could be travel on its own. And what you get out of travel, to tap into those things to make you seem a much more rounded
Mm.
person, and knowing that through your love and interest outside of business or social life, it could be something that you're particularly into, then that builds on your whole persona.
And since you mentioned persona and also speaking about your passion, there's a very thin line, I feel like sometimes, because the people who are memorable for us and probably stand out in our memory would be the ones that made us feel special. Like rather than talking about what they have achieved, what it's all about them, they made the whole conversation about us. Like they were curious, they're interested in us, and they let us explain. Because sometimes I feel that there is a problem. Most of the time when we are having a conversation, you'll see it's most of the time someone starts and you feel before you could finish, they're literally ready to say the next thing.
Yeah.
And you doubt at that point whether they have actually heard.
Listen to you at all.
Yeah, exactly. So I think this is another important part of communication, that listening, as I was saying, but at the same time with intention and to understand, and anything that you're asking that has generated that curiosity based on that intentional listening. If every listener could change just one thing about how they communicate today, what would that be, you think?
Change the focus from yourself to them.
Mm.
I've got one example. There was a massive Welsh rugby union guy, huge, great big guy, wearing the plume of feathers, and he had gate crashed this wedding party and he was so drunk it was untrue. So when I arrived, they said, I think it was the father of the bride or whatever it may say, can you, you know about rugby, you're a rugby fan, can you speak to this person and try to sort something out? But he was getting very belligerent, this Welsh guy, and he had had quite a lot to drink. So I thought, how am I going to handle this? So I walked up to him, and I took a bit of a risk. I just put my two fingers and just tapped on his shirt. I said, fantastic. What a team. What players you've got. What history you've got. And immediately it stopped. And immediately he had something to talk about. He
Mm.
had somebody that was on his same wavelength.
Yeah.
And it worked out that when we finally stopped talking, I think it was something like 2 in the morning or something like that. He was crying because he just had a terrible, um, a situation with his father.
Mm.
So there was rage there. There was, and all of that thing. So he was acting like a complete mad person, but it was to try to connect with them on something that was relevant to them,
Mm.
and try to read them, and that was obviously is an obvious example of knowing someone and what they're into. The softer way of doing it is to say, tell me about yourself. What for example, did you get tickets for Oasis, or did you
Mm.
go to see Springsteen, or whatever it may be, and something that you feel their age and stage, that you can do something which literally creates that bridge between you.
But in that anecdote, I think you shared something very important, the power of being vulnerable.
Yes,
And it's also you're being vulnerable at the same time, that person who was holding on and trying to be this tough guy. And the moment he could feel that, tap into that inner voice, and that person who resides inside that external hard exterior, straight away he became vulnerable and he felt that he's seen, he's heard, and he opened up, the whole floodgate opened.
that's right. And immediately he moved to one side,
Uh,
away from the wedding party, and stopped drinking.
wow. That brings me down to this question about inner dialogue. Say, when we have a communication, when we are talking to people, you touched upon it. We were talking about it, say, when it's someone important that we are meeting, we always feel, okay, is this just the simple me talking to this big person of this huge personality? And that affects to a certain extent. But other than that, sometimes we feel that, okay, what if I'm misunderstood or I'm misinterpreted? And if I say something, it's not right. And that's why in many meetings, you'll see that someone who's conducting the meeting, they say there's no right or wrong question. So this is one of the reasons as well. So how do you think people can tackle this inner dialogue and the effect of it in terms of how it affects your communication skills?
Depending on the situation, um, if it could be something about misunderstanding and miscommunication. And it could be something that you say to yourself, hold on, I don't know if I've really understood this person or what he's saying. And you could say someone else, oh, forgive me, have I got that right? Did you really say that? What did you mean? I'm asking for information just so that I know, because
Mm.
I may have got it wrong. So you turn it back on yourself
Mm.
to make out that it may be you that is causing this particular issue or this
Rather than
particular
making that
problem.
person defensive, like,
That's right.
yeah.
Rather than them saying, "Oh, you're getting on to me," or you're attacking me, and why have you said that? It could be you could say, "Well, hold on, excuse me. I think it's the problem is with me, not with you. I
Mm.
think I may have just got it wrong in terms of misunderstanding your meaning or um, what you've just said."
All
It,
these skills, I think, are applicable from boardroom to bedroom to social interaction to personal relationship, everything. So how does it look like? Good communication. If I say, okay, whatever or however many points you feel like, if I say just five things or three things to be mindful of in terms of your personal relationship, what would you say?
ultimately, what you're trying to do is to create an interaction, an interplay between the person that you've just met with yourself and what you've got to contribute
Mm.
and what they've got to contribute. And so it's getting the balance right and realizing that you don't know everything. They
Mhm.
probably don't know everything. So let's meet somewhere in the middle.
Nice.
And so let's together um, realize and work towards that very positive middle part where you're both together and wanting to communicate and wanting to make sure that whatever you're trying to do is understood clearly,
Mm.
understanding properly, and that you are more than willing to take action to
Mm.
be able to bridge a gap and to make things. And here's that other word coming up in my head as I'm talking: harmony.
And it's not only words, and you prove yourself and all the words, you
Yeah,
put them in action as well.
it is. And it could be very, very much so in terms of body language.
Hmm. That's
It's very
interesting.
much in terms of feeling that you're not as if you are aggressive in any way, and a way that that you're welcoming.
Hmm.
And here's the big one: eye contact. To make sure, because if you realize, it's something which I'm aware of
Hmm.
more and more, is that if you actually talk to someone, you're talking to their eyes, and you're realizing that you're speaking to them. And if you make that contact of two people literally seeing each other, then that makes a massive detail. Because if you're not actually looking at each other and communicating with each other, in that way, basically you're not making that contact. You're not bothered,
Hmm.
and they're not bothered. If you can do something which is caring, loving, helping, and supportive, immediately that body language changes. People relax. And, I try to do, not always successfully, but I try to do at least one totally random act of kindness a day where you've helped someone. And it could be helping somebody get in and off the bus or whatever it may be.
Yeah.
Or it could be that somebody, um, perhaps an older person, but it doesn't have to be old, it could be anybody, if they're searching for something, but where it is, and you could help them, and that could be completely randomly, and
Yeah.
that you've never met this person before, you don't know who they are, you've got no connection with you from there, but just a random act of care,
Hmm.
is something which is worth everything.
Because you're the one who's striking up this conversation, you're the one who's beginning it, and even approaching this complete stranger, but you're making it easier for them to feel safe because you're helping them.
Yes,
So I think so. If we take, say, in terms of what to be mindful of, make someone feel heard, and eye contact that would show that you're engaged, you're listening to that person. And based on that, whatever response you give, also you make them feel safe as well. That
yes, and that you're not a threat.
you're not a threat, that you're in a safer place, whatever you want to. I'm listening to you. Yeah, you won't be attacked. And because sometimes, how many times, even in personal relationships or among friends, partners, romantic relationships, people will share something and they make themselves vulnerable, and later on that's used against them. So things like that happen. So it's very important that you have to make someone feel safe, and it takes time, I guess, and over again, as I said, that through your action, you need to prove that, okay, it's
Yeah,
possible to have this conversation and you're safe. This is our safe space.
yes.
So we are coming towards the end of it. So I will ask you one question. Is every listener, I mean, we touched upon a lot of different things. It's very useful from the book. I mean, book has even more than what we have discussed. We just discussed a few pages here and there. But I'll just mention the book once again, and hopefully you'll add something more to it, transform your communication skills. Because in modern day context, social media, probably you'd like to add some
Oh, yeah, it
chapters
is.
of things here and there.
It's out
But
of date.
still, whatever there is, it's so useful. And it's like a reference book. Every now and then you feel like you cannot finish it ever. You just go back to it every now and then, different situations cover, and you just go to the chapter and say, okay, let's see, I need to reread that chapter because I need to be reminded of that situation. And today I'm going for this meeting or meeting that person, or going to, say, for example, a wedding where I have a speech. And how am I going to do that? So if every listener could change one thing about how they communicate today, what would you suggest?
Think about the act of communication in
Mm,
a positive, caring, loving sense. Now, using that word loving, you don't normally do that within the business, or so, but it is the way that you could project um, that you are really interested
Mm,
in what they want and what they're doing, that really makes people want to return
mm,
their um, interest and attention to you in this mad and crazy world that we're all living in. And there's everyone's rushing around and it's also terribly stressed. But if you can somehow in your communication just put all of that craziness and that stress on pause for the moments that it takes to make that connection
mm.
between two people.
The act of kindness, I think that's where it starts. Because
Yeah.
just have patience for other people, because where you're coming from, they're not probably on the same page. Just give people
No.
that time to be able to communicate with you effectively.
Because naturally people have got the barriers up. The barriers are up all the time.
Yeah.
The worries, the uncertainties, the fear. So if there's a way that you could take the barriers down
Everything
and
becomes
show that you're not a threat and that you want to help or you want to communicate, it's even a question of showing how to get to from A to B. It could be something very, very simple, but it's the way that people are then able to take those barriers down, ease it a little bit, and welcome you into their space.
really true. And I feel if there's only one thing people would take from this conversation, I think this be mindful of being kind to each other. It's very
Yeah.
important. And that's what we're missing. So, what legacy do you hope that your book leaves in the world of human connection?
To be absolutely confident of their own selves, to be confident in the gift that they can give, to be confident about the way that if they take the first step forward to approach someone, that they'll do it in a way that is not threatening,
Hmm.
that it is in a way that ultimately you want to communicate, you want to share experiences and share love, help, and guidance with another person. And if you can do that, either in the boardroom, in business, or wherever it may be, you'll find that, for example, within this book here, is that if you use some of the tips that these other coaches give, not personally me, but what they've experienced,
Hmm.
it all comes down to helping, giving help.
I mean, that's what we are trying to do in knowing who you are. That's what you're doing. You're giving your time so people can listen to you and just few things you experienced in your life and just listen to those. That's what I.
Yes.
And so this is the book. If they want to get a copy of the book, where would they go?
Quickly and easily on Amazon, it's available as an ebook on Kindle, and
Hmm.
I think it's at the moment about £4.99,
Okay,
something like that. So they can get that the digital version. There are many copies of the hard book available, and also just recently I ordered more copies of the book from the publishers.
great.
So I can always order more books for people,
Good.
and they can contact through you for us to be able to get it to get out. And I do appreciate, by the way, that clearly where we started, the book was written in 2015, but I still think that about at least 85% of that book is bang on for what we need today.
I feel the same. That's why I was saying that it's full of so much research and also practical tips, techniques, and it touches upon so many things. It's not only about one aspect of communication. It's from your physiology to your psychology and your mindset. Everything is covered and different techniques related to those different exercises. So it's really good and very useful. So Steve, the if they want to find you, do you have a social media page or anywhere they can look you up?
At the moment, my focus is very much on the three latest books that I've written, along with the most incredibly talented co-author Janet Neville, and they are the Being Spirit books.
Hmm.
And So the first one, being Spirit, won an award in the 2019 Soul and Spirit Awards. The second one, being Spirit, and the last one was published in January of this year. Well, it is a coffee table book, but masquerading as a paperback.
Ah,
Because then on every chapter, there's some beautiful photographs.
nice.
So if they want to go on to beingspirit.com, then they will be able to contact me and send me an email.
Put all the details in the show description as well, so where it'll be easier for people to anytime they want to
Yeah.
reach, they will have all those details there. Steve, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you. And there are many things I've been reminded of. And while I was listening to you, I was thinking, okay, this one I'll have to put in practice, and this one I'll have to practice more. Yeah, this is what I'm doing right. Okay, that's nice. So it's really useful. And I hope the people who are listening, who are watching
Yes.
you now and us having this conversation, it will be useful for them too. So thanks a lot. You have a great day.
So, thanks so much. And I love the guitars at the back because, as I've said to you before, musicians are gods.